with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. Hey, Rich, man, we got a really great show today. Coming on here in just a moment is Vance Ginn. He's the chief economist at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and he's just published a piece, very, very important piece, how the right pro-growth policies can restore the American economy. Well, versus, the alternative, which is socialism right now. I mean, how else can you describe the Democrats today and what they're proposing for this country?
Well, I would say sort of like Alan Bates in his film from the 60s when he's breaking out of the insane asylum and they have the inmates running the town and running the insane asylum. I mean, that's where we're at right now when you look at it. It's just very, very, very perverse. Not unexpected for the Democrats where they're going. This is where they had to go to gin up their base, whatever base they have right now. And, I'd say we're in a very, very dangerous time. And I know we hear this every election. We say it, this is the most important election. This is, and I agree with Newt, probably the most important election since in the 1860s, post-Civil War. That's how important this is. And I'm delighted that we have a spectacular guest to talk about it.
Well, I'm going to introduce him right now. We got to get right to this. We're very pleased to have joining us the former senator from South Carolina, Jim DeMint. He is also the chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute and the author of a book that's being published on July 4th. That's the appropriate date. Saving America from Socialism, How to Stop Progressive Attacks on Freedom. Senator, welcome to the show.
Neil, Rich, it is great to be your guest, and I am thrilled to talk about America and how we can move it forward. But mostly I want to talk about the threat of socialism so people will know what it is.
Well, it's very appropriate that you're with us. I just want to tell you one short story. I got to get this out, but Rich and I was doing a radio show once, and we were the first one to give your protege, Marco Rubio, national radio. I mean, this is when he was running against Charlie Crist, and
we were number one in the nation to do it.
That's right, and nobody heard of him before, and nobody thought he had a chance. And the reason I bring that up is he's been on our show a few times, but I remember one show distinctly that he was heading to your office, and he was in Washington, D.C., sitting down, on the curb there on the street before going into your office.
He was studying.
Listening to all the cars. Right. And, he was actually just about to go in to see you, and we did an interview with him, and he was on his way to meet you. So I just thought I would share that with you. That's so we've had some connection in the past.
Oh, good.
So tell us about your book. And, your book is the playbook to save America from socialism. And I got to tell you, man, there couldn't be anything more scary. And I talk to a lot of people, and everybody is scared of what's happening in our country and what the alternative could be come November.
Well, Neil, you're exactly right. There's no greater threat than socialism to our country. And it's so subtle in a lot of ways. And many young people think it's a great way to run a country with the government controlling businesses and telling us what to do, what we can buy and sell. We've gotten a little taste of that with the coronavirus lockdown, where they told some businesses they could open, some they couldn't. People couldn't meet together. People couldn't go to church. I mean, this is just a small little glimpse of what happens when government begins to say, for your own good, we're going to take your rights away. But socialism has been tried many times, and millions of people have died because of it, and it never helps the little guy.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to tell you that, watching this is sort of like watching Dr. Zhivago. But in reality, we are in a cultural revolution. Jim, this is a very, very frightening moment for America and why we need such strong leadership. But when you make a comparison, Neil, Stalin did this in Russia. Mao did this in China. The ISIS and others, the other terrorists, did it in the Mideast. They try to wipe out the history, the culture, the understanding of what makes us us. And that is a very, very scary thought, because if you don't have that, you don't know who you are and where you've been. That makes you so wonderful. So, Jim, what you're doing right now is so significant. Can you talk about that for a second, this cultural revolution as it's leading to a socialist environment?
I would love to, because one of the ways that the elite control is to create chaos and anarchy. And they have basically tried to destroy the traditional paradigm of the ideas that can make people successful, that can pull them out of poverty, that can help people start businesses. But removing our history, if you don't understand the mistakes you've made in the past and how you've corrected them, I mean, we should be proud of America for how we have overcome so many mistakes we've made. Certainly slavery was a terrible thing, but hundreds of thousands of Americans died fixing that problem. And since then, we have done more than any other country to create equal rights. We're not there yet. There's always going to be a lot to do, but we cannot fix problems if we don't understand the causes. And the cause of problems in America is not racism, and it's not capitalism. It's not all the lies we're hearing today. There are problems, and we can fix them if we understand why we're having them.
Jim, you were very involved in the Tea Party movement, and the highest ranking member of government who was associated with the Tea Party movement. It was an incredible thing. It was this amazing groundswell of the people taking back their government and being very proud of our Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance.
It led the turnaround.
Yeah, I've spoken at a number of Tea Party meetings, and it was really moving. You know, they'd take part of the Constitution and they'd read it and they'd talk about it. And I mean, this was really real to these folks. What is the state of the Tea Party movement today? Why has it kind of disappeared from the media and from the national discussion? I mean, it was so powerful, and you were at the head of it.
Well, the media so vilified the idea of the Tea Party and mischaracterized who was part of it. But I've never met better people. I mean, there were conservatives and recovering liberals and people who'd never been involved in politics, but they just wanted to take care, make our country better, and recognize what was working and what wasn't. They didn't like the bailouts. They didn't like a government takeover of health care. But those people are still there. They've just been discouraged. And because of the vilification, they're now, a lot of them are part of Freedom Works or Tea Party Patriots, and they're there. What we're trying to do at the Conservative Partnership is help mobilize them again around central focus of free markets and free people. And the other side, the left, is trying to create the anarchy that leads to government takeover. So we're in a real battle, and I've never seen it like this before. And the danger is if you have too many Americans who don't understand what's at stake.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And that gets back to another conversation about the educational system. You don't teach history. You don't teach civics. Jim, when you're talking about this, we can't help but think about, where are all these concepts coming from that we're seeing on TV every night? And you're right. We are overwhelming the system. That's Cloward and Piven. We're overwhelming the system. That's Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky. You're using terms and mantras that Billy Ayers put out back in the late 60s, 70s when he was attacking the Pentagon, he was attacking the police department in New York. Systemic racism comes right from that manifesto that he wrote. Because we're not a country of systemic. The stats don't even, they belie that. It's not real. So when you see that in your book, you're talking about that. Now, how do we rally the troops? How do we combat that, Jim?
Well, we can't fix it in the short term, although I think certainly voting is key. And the departure from a Donald Trump to a Joe Biden, Joe is going to be a puppet of the left. So certainly short term, the election is key. Part of our job is to make sure when good people come to Washington, we take better care of them. But you mentioned it before, education. And now at the state level, all across the country, more education choice and education savings accounts. There are a lot of states trying to take back education because we can't have a free country if the government keeps educating people in a way that they can't succeed in a free country. So, and the left is going to continue to make victims of Americans, to divide us into all these groups. And we need to be Americans first. And if we start with education, we move a lot of decision-making back to the states. We've seen that during the coronavirus. I mean, they don't make all the right decisions, but you can certainly see the difference between a Florida and a New York, or Texas and a California, and people can begin to see what works and what doesn't. When we do it all in Washington, people really don't know where the problem's coming from.
Jim, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be on just here in a moment, folks. Still a lot more to talk about with former Senator Jim DeMint from the great state of South Carolina, and also the chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute and author of Saving America from Socialism, How to Stop Progressive Attacks on Freedom. We're going to be right back together with Dr. Rothman and Senator DeMint. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are very, very fortunate to be joined with former South Carolina Senator Jim DeMint, who is also the chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute. Still much more to talk to with the former senator. Jim, President Trump is talking about the silent majority. I mean, this is something that Richard Nixon talked about, the silent majority. And you just mentioned of how you're working with the Tea Party people and the people who really came out in droves. I mean, I remember that was the 2010 election. Remember, Rich? I mean, I remember doing a radio show right after that election. I mean, it was a historic wave that came because of the Tea Party. The biggest change in seats in Congress in the history of our country happened during that wave. So, Jim, are they out there? And is that silent majority there alive and well? And are they going to come out in November?
That's a great question. And I believe they're still out there. I know they're discouraged. They feel like Republicans betrayed them. A lot of folks went to Washington under the Tea Party umbrella, but didn't fight for the things they said they were going to fight for, do it next term, that kind of thing. And I saw a lot of the folks I helped elect become part of the swamp, or at least certainly not be the fighters. And that's really why we started the Conservative Partnership, is to take care of people once they get there. But I believe the movement is still there, but it's got to have the right ideas and the right message, because this was not just a what we call red meat, just throwing stuff out where people are angry and they're going to charge the hill. These were very thoughtful people from all over the country, and they're still there. And part of what I want to do with the rest of the time I have on this earth is help pull together all these common sense, conservative, traditional thinking Americans and give them a playbook on how they can change things and stop looking to Washington for solutions.
I think you're very right. One of the things that I find in discussions that I have throughout many areas of the country as well is that people are this is challenging people intellectually like never before. I mean, this is hitting home. This could be your neighborhood. And it isn't your neighborhood. And so I think they want to be part of it. I think they're right to read your book, listen to those that support you, listen to you speak when you're on different television shows and shows like this, and understand where they're going, because they see Antifa, they see the destruction that Antifa is doing. They see Biden, who's the presumptive nominated person for the Democratic Party, who really doesn't leave his basement. I mean, I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the discussion with Obama the other night, the fundraiser that they did, and they're all recorded questions. Jim, they were recorded questions. Biden got so confused. This is no joke. He started talking to the recorded question, and I was watching Obama just roll his eyes. Like, I can't believe this guy's doing that. So, Jim, right now, you could be the catalyst to help us get where we need to be, sort of like back to that promised land, Jim.
Well, it's going to take a lot of us, including all of the folks on radio all over the country. That's kind of our air cover for what we need to do. But we need to get people on the same page. A lot of conservative groups go in different directions. A lot of what we do now is to try to get them on the same page of issues. And even more important, what's the right message? Because the pollsters are out there manipulating the public by the way they ask questions. We need to give people positive messages that they can understand, and conservatives can't be just the ones that say, no. We've got to say, here's how we're going to save America. And so I'm convinced that the people are there. I'm convinced Americans love their country, and they are sick and tired of folks who are trying to vilify it.
So Jim, how do you think that we're doing economically right now with the recovery? And we talked about coronavirus, and you just mentioned it about the distinction between how New York or Florida or how Texas and California handled it, and but there's still a lot of people out there that's scared and concerned, and it's just a very, very weird time. So how do you think that we're doing on opening up the economy? And, what is your prediction over the next 90 days? Because a lot of this election will turn on where the economy is and what the perception of the economy is at that time.
You're exactly right. I mean, we've got a lot of Republican governors who are opening their states back up and seeing their economy get going again. We've got a lot of blue state governors who want to keep things slow because they really want it to affect elections. I hate to say that, but it's very apparent that it's true. The economy is not in good shape. I suspect it can come back relatively quickly, although we've lost thousands of small businesses permanently, and it's going to take a while to reconstruct that. But we need to get America back to work, but we need to do it by addressing the fear. If you get the facts, Neil and Rich, I mean, if you're a healthy working-age American, you have almost no risk from this. It's 80% of the people have been in nursing homes. They're over 80 years old. The folks younger who have died, most of them have some other serious condition. Now, I'm not saying there's no risk, but if we can't eliminate all the risk, but if people knew the real facts about this virus, for most people, it is less dangerous than the flu if you're younger. And a lot of times you don't even know you have it. I've never found that to be the case with the flu.
Yeah. Very good points. Hey, Senator, thanks for being on the show, man. I wish we had more time. We're going to have to get you back real soon. I'd like to learn a lot more about the Conservative Partnership Institute. That will be for another day. Still much, much more to talk about with former Senator Jim DeMint, chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute and author of the upcoming book, Saving America from Socialism, How to Stop Progressive Attacks on Freedom. Coming up, we have Vance Ginn, chief economist at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He's going to talk about pro-growth policies that can restore the American economy. Very, very important discussion coming up.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. Rich, an incredible discussion with Senator DeMint. What a great American. And, I remember, that election in 2010 and that huge Republican wave that took over the House and the Senate. And it really made the next 6 years of the Obama administration to where, he just couldn't operate, right? I mean, he was facing a pretty hostile American Congress. I mean, and the wave was so massive that it could not be ignored. They took a shellacking. I think that's what he said.
There's a line that follows that from an ad. Take a shellacking and keep on something. And somehow it's evading me right now. Yeah, that's true.
But and also his book, Saving America from Socialism. I mean, how appropriate can that be?
Well, I mean, in terms of timeliness, it's exactly what we need right now. And we are facing an onslaught of socialism. And this is no joke. I mean, this is no joke. When you have the rioters out there saying, either you give us, this was just on the news yesterday, if you don't give us what we want, we are burning it down. And you can interpret that, literally or figuratively. It's all a matter of interpretation. That's a really scary, miserable statement for someone to make.
Either way, it's not good.
Yeah, we got to fight back.
Got to be more positive, man.
Yeah,
we got to be more positive. Let's be positive, man. We got so much to be thankful for. All this negativity, let's be positive. Let's work together. Both sides are not going to get everything they want, but there's enough room here to compromise to have a better country. And let me tell you, if we're going to stave off socialism, it's going to be because the American economy is strong. It's going to be because we have pro-growth policies in this country that's going to get our people back to work. And it's also going to be because we're not going to shut the economy down again. Because, I mean, that was a disaster. I mean, they're going to be writing about that for years and years to come on what a huge mistake that was, which is a great segue into our
there you go.
Into our next guest. As I told you at the beginning of the show, we're very pleased to have with us Vance Ginn, who's the chief economist of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. There it is. And he's published a piece. It was first seen in The Federalist. We love The Federalist. And the title of the piece was How the Right Pro-Growth Policies Can Restore the American Economy. Vance, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you, Neil. It's a pleasure to be with you both.
So, I mean, you point out that, it's important that we should never shut down our economy again. But right now you're seeing a resurgence of coronavirus, and it's got people spooked. And one of the things that you see, Vance, and I mean, it's such a difference of handling this, is you got the Democrats who are saying that they're going to have this almost virtual convention in Milwaukee, meaning I don't know what that means, but almost virtual. I mean,
it means hiding Biden. What are you talking about? It means hiding Biden. Think of the end of the move, Love Actually. That's what's going to look like.
I really believe, guys, that's their plan. Hide him.
Of course it is.
That's the best way for this guy to get elected. And then you have the Republicans that are saying, hey, look, we're going to have a normal convention because we're not going to be scared. Vance, I mean, how different of approaches can that be? And you also see it in the states. You're in a state, Texas. We're in a state of Florida. We have different types of governors than you have up in the Northeast or, say, Illinois. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, it's quite fascinating to kind of watch and see the difference in ways that governors are handling it across the country, right? You have Florida and Texas that are opening up faster and ending the phase out, whereas those like in, Cuomo up in New York, Governor Cuomo, and Governor Newsom over in California taking a more, delayed approach, if you will, and the same thing going for the big parties, conventions. And it seems to be driven a lot by fear, right? I mean, this whole thing, what we've seen is just a lot of fear, and we react differently due to that fear. And what we've noticed is that there's been a lot of people just freezing, right, where people stopped the social mobility, people going out as much when this first started back in really March. And now you see the fear is going into almost in fight mode, where you see some of these, contributing to maybe some of these protests and things going around. So what I'm really seeing is a lot of media attention and media hype and exaggerating the key points about cases and other things without looking at the full picture, because really what we've seen is where the cures have been worse than the disease.
That's 100% correct, and what you're saying is valid, and I think that's part of the agenda for the mainstream media. You are correct in saying that they're pushing the negativity and not the positivity. The stats don't tell you everything. The stat that they're looking at is how many people are testing positive on a daily basis, and yes, that's taken a spike in your own state. It's taken a spike in Arizona, Florida, and a few other states. But the number you have to look at, not just the number of people who test positive, you have to look at the death rate. And the death rate has been collapsing over the last few weeks. WND says it's down 75%. Another media is saying it's down close to 90%, which means fewer people are dying, although we're finding more because we're testing more. So that it's logical you're going to find more people. I don't have a problem with that. There's a virus out there. I get that. But if you don't tell the truth, and understand that it's fewer people are dying, and it's morphing, Vince, to go to the younger people. The median age now went from 65 just a few weeks ago. Now it's 35. People 35 and under don't die from this disease anyway, which is why the disease is not killing as many people right now.
Yep. No, there's a lot. You're exactly right. The death rates are down. Here in Texas, death rates are down as well. We've had this spike in cases and the spike in hospitalizations. I think really two of the key points you want to look at. Over the last year, I was the chief economist of the Office of Management and Budget at the White House, and there was a lot of things that went over the last year. But part of my time there, the last couple of months, was really looking at the coronavirus and seeing what the direction that it was and where it was going over time, and that allowed us to provide some guidance out of the White House. And so now what I'm looking at is we've got to look at the hospital capacity. If we recall, that was the main reason why we wanted to flatten the curve, right, was to make sure that we didn't overwhelm the hospital capacity. So for the health perspective, the death rates is really important, and then also it's really important to look at the available hospital capacity. And while people are fretting and having a lot of fear here in Texas in particular, right, because of the cases increasing, hospitalizations increasing, we've also have substantial available capacity. Like right now, we still have about 25% of ICU beds are available across the state, for example. So there doesn't need to be that overall fear. And instead, we need to think about, to your point, how do we get to herd immunity? How do we get to a vaccine? Because we can't go back to a shutdown. I mean, that just wastes lives and livelihoods in the process, and it's really harmful.
Hey, Vance, we got to take a quick break. We're talking with Vance Ginn, who's the chief economist at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and his piece, How the Right Pro-Growth Policies Can Restore the American Economy. We're going to be right back. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Vance Ginn, who is the chief economist at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and he's recently published a piece is originally in the Federalist, How the Right Pro-Growth Policies Can Restore the American Economy. So, Vance, I mean, what should we be doing? I mean, we shouldn't be shutting our economy down. That's right. That's the first thing to do is keep the economy open.
That doesn't sound very Texan, does it? Yeah. I can't imagine Texans.
Shut her down.
I've never seen that in Houston and Dallas and other cities.
Stay indoors.
Ain't going to happen.
Right. But what should we be doing, Vance? What should we be doing? Are we doing it or not?
Well, I think the number one thing is of course, phasing out and ending these shutdowns as quickly as possible. I mean, that's really how you get businesses continuing to operate. You get people out there being able to buy things and everything else. I mean, look, we've got a lot of pent-up demand, a lot of pent-up supply, and then you think about how much money that Congress has put into the overall system as well. There's a lot of money out there that's sloshing around. Then you have the Federal Reserve in there. So many factors. And in addition, what sort of barriers are in place that are keeping businesses from doing what they do best, which is invest and then hire people at good quality wages? And I think some of those are the regulations, right, that have been suspended during this crisis. And so we shouldn't let a crisis go to waste. And in this case, we should get rid of those regulations that aren't necessary. In addition, I think we should look at the payroll tax cut. I think could be a good idea. And then you also want to look at something we've been working on. It's called the Workplace Recovery Act. We've been doing some work on that here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which is a way to continue to allow for businesses to operate. So that way, whenever the phase-outs do end, we don't have a massive number of businesses that have had to close. And in particular, those small mom-and-pop shops, right? Those small businesses that weren't able to access the PPP or the Paycheck Protection Program that Congress passed. It's mainly a lot of these bigger businesses that have received those funds, and that's going to be unfortunate because a lot of those mom-and-pop shops and small businesses are doing most of the hiring across this great country. And in particular, another thing I wanted to bring up was I think we're going to see some income disparity because those states that are opening up faster are going to have more job creation. We've already seen that with the latest state-level jobs report by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But you're also just going to see more wage growth over time because they have more time to be more productive. And so this idea of our first segment of talking about the different disparities of opening up versus delaying is going to have a lot of repercussions along the way.
Well, you're very, very correct. I mean, if you think about that, we had probably the strongest ADP job report in years, maybe decades, when we created a month ago 2.5 million jobs. I mean, it was just an amazing report. In Subway, for example, we're talking about reopening and getting re-engaging in life. Well, Subway announced this week that they're going to hire 50,000 people nationally, getting them back to work all over the United States, which is great. But I think you're 100% correct. We have to protect those who are the most at risk to this virus, but we have to let other people who aren't function and get the specie, get the money flowing in this country, which everyone will benefit by. So, I think you're 100% correct. The bank regulators are willing to roll back post-crisis rules to release billions from the nation's largest institutions. So you have the tools in your toolkit to make it work. You have to have the initiative. You have to have the courage to move forward with that. And don't get hung up on you can't hide under your bed from this virus. It's just not going to work for the United States. That's the bottom line.
Vance, how concerned should we be about the 1.5 million people who applied for unemployment insurance this week and last week? That number seems to be staying there. Is that a number that we should be overly concerned about?
Those are the initial weekly claims for the last week. And those are important. They, especially early on, they indicated a lot of people are losing their jobs, which we expected. If you're shutting down the economy, of course that's going to happen. But I really think what we should look at is the continuing claims, and those dropped pretty substantially to below 20 million. Not saying that we're in a good labor market situation, but what it does show is that those places that are opening up, there's more hiring that's going on. And to your point about more than 2 million jobs that were added, I believe that was a record as far back as we've been keeping this report. And so just something that's fantastic. And so we need to keep that going.
Vince, you're very, very correct. I mean, we had originally a number of months ago, 30 million people on continuing claims. That dropped down to 25 million. It dropped down to 20.3 million. And now it's down to 19.5 million. So the continuing claims, as Vince just pointed out, are going in the right direction.
So Vance, we just have a few seconds left. What is your prediction? What is your prediction for the June unemployment number, based on what Dr. Rothman just said about how these numbers have been cascading down?
Yeah, I think it's going to be another good month, as we've seen even more opening up, more phase outs of these
Single digits.
Well, maybe. I think they will. The unemployment will drop some. I don't know if we'll quite get to single digits yet. It'd be great if we would, but I don't think we'll quite get there.
Very good. Hey, Vance, we always enjoy having you on the show. Vance Ginn from the Texas Public Policy Foundation and the author of How the Right Pro-Growth Policies Can Restore the American Economy. Vance, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, Vance, very passionate guy, and worked at the White House up until recently, and now with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, doing some great work there. And, the economy, man, it is really going to be the deciding factor of this election. I get all the liberal media, and I see their summaries every day of what they're saying, and they're all high-fiving. I mean, look at the polls, and Biden's ahead by 14%, and he's ahead in all the swing states. And if the election was today, he'd have 333 electoral votes. I read that this morning, and but let me tell you, whatever's going on today, whatever the conversation is today, it will not be even 30 days from now or 60 days from now or 90 days from now. The election is like a lifetime away. I mean, there's going to be so much that's going to happen between now and then. And the economic numbers. I mean, if the trend continues that you just mentioned together with Vance about, the amount of people who are on continuing unemployment and how that number has come down and it keeps coming down, what is that number to where the American people say, hey, look, we just gone through a very terrible thing, but we're getting out of it faster than we imagined. And, it's not in yet right now what the answer of that question will be. Are we better off now? Have we got out of this quicker than we thought we would? Or is there no end in sight?
I think you're right. It's going to come down to the economy, and it's going to come down to something that Jim said in the beginning of the show, and that is how are you going to get me out of this? What's the message? Use the word message. I think it's a very important word. What is the message that Biden's going to put out there? Well, it can't just be vote for me because you hate Trump. It's not going to work. And don't vote for me because I hate Trump. And we can hate Trump together. That's not going to work. It has to be things are pretty miserable and I have the answer for it and this is what I'm going to do. He has to articulate that. At the same time, President Trump, whom I support, I don't think he can say, look, for the last 4 years, I did it, we made it strong, America was bigger, better, greater than all across, ever before in history. He's right. It was. It can be that again. But it can't just be that message saying we're going to do it again. It's got to be beyond that. It's got to be, look, we have a law and order problem right now. Not only do we have a virus, but we have a virus within that's a physical ripping apart this country. That's the virus. And he has to address that. So, one, he's going to address the virus that you can get a vaccine for that, Fauci's convinced that we have to have a vaccine. Then you're going to have to address the law and order because that scares everybody. That's a scary thing. That's almost more scary than the virus because the virus you can't see it. It's anonymous. But the law and order thing can hit your hometown, and in many cases it already has to many people. That's a scary thing. People are talking about that. That's a water cooler thing. If you had a water cooler that people are going to go to, but they can't because they have to separate themselves. It's only one person goes to the water cooler, so sociopaths will do great in this because they talk to themselves. They'll have great conversations. But Trump has to have a very clear, concise message. We did all that. We're going to do it again, but these are the things, what the but's going to be to get back against the Biden, who basically is hiding out in the basement in an unknown address in Baltimore.
Well, and but he could be elected just by staying out of the public.
Yeah, he could.
And I got to tell you, it's the mood of America, come the middle of October. And do they see us getting out of this and getting out of this sooner than later? I really believe economically, this is going to be a very, very important topic. So what can this administration do to further the economic interests of the United States? And how do we get our people back to work? And, these coronavirus numbers, in certain parts of the country, they're growing again. They're growing again. That's not good. I mean, there are people who are very worried about that, Rich.
Well, they are very worried about it because they're getting it from one agenda and one point of view. You're right. The numbers show that more and more people are testing positive, and they spiked in a handful of states. 100% correct. The message that's not getting out is that the death rate, unless you go to Fox or something, but the rest of them aren't going to do it. Well, the CNN, and the rest are not reporting that. So if the right message can get out, we can turn that, but it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of our radio shows. That's what it comes down to.
Well, Rich, that's a great way to end this show, that we are here and we will be here and we will be providing great commentary and great guests and great content on what's happening in this country, specifically with your jobs. But unfortunately, right now, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.